So yeah, but you do see it. You see the kids who just can go right into college like it's just another step, and other people it's like, what do I do now? I'm on my own. I don't know how to be on my own. Yeah, big problem. And I had the thought as we were discussing this because again, and I have my biases for sure, but I think of the military as being so structured, so not wanting you to solve your own problems and go your own way. And yet that's what you're talking about doing, and that's how you were raised. It still confuses me a little. Why would you want the military? And I'm not knocking the military, just I'm trying to make this all make sense in my head.
So I kind of like the idea of like structure and like being is it discipline, learning discipline, and like I'm always like I'd like to think I always remember like my true self, I guess you could say, like no matter like what the situation is, I'm always like, okay, we gotta step back, I gotta think, does it align with my core values, does it align with what I want, And with like the military, even though I might be told or given orders, I'm like, yeah, that's probably not like what I want to do. I'll obviously have to follow them, but I'm still gonna remember who I am, and like I'm gonna sort of like I guess separate that part. Like that's like I guess you could say a con to joining the army. But on the other hand, I'm gonna be gaining all this experience, gaining like the discipline, and hopefully giving me that like boost for like my future career. Like more so, I'm seeing this as like a stepping stone rather than like my future, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, I bet that makes sense. And there's a part of life, and again, there's a lot of people who never learn this, young and old. There's a time when you have a right to claim your own autonomy and do things your own way, and there's times when you don't. And that's something I certainly got good at in contracting because okay, I'm the boss of my employees, but some customer is the boss of me, So I'm telling them what to do, but I'm telling them what to do based on what the customer expects from us. And that customer might himself be some sort of an agent of somebody else because I did commercial contracting. So there's really no person who is the ultimate customer of the work I did. It's corporations and contractors and this and that. You're at a job site and there's plumbers, and that plumber is part of a plumbing business. Electrician's part of an electrical contractor, and the concrete guys are part of a concrete contracting. It goes on, and yet you're all there at once. You're all representing your own interests. You're all trying to make money, and yet you have to work cooperatively. So it does come down to who's in charge here, and it does become almost since we're talking about the military, it's a little bit like the military because it is kind of top down. There is an owner who is a corporation or something, not necessarily a guy, and they contract with the general contractor who contracts with the subcontractors, and that's me. And I hire employees, and it's very important to know who's in charge here at any specific point. There's things in the job site that I have the right to make the call, and the plumber's got to answer to me. And if they're right around something else, it's up to the plumber to decide, and I have to answer to him. As long as everybody gets that, it works. Very little wriggling going on, Yeah, that if you're in charge of this, I'll answer to you. Then you start running around and somebody answers to you. As a matter of fact, I did work with a contractor. It was really interesting. They had, depending at any particular time, they had 3 or 4 people who were qualified to be job superintendents, which means they were in charge of the job at any particular job site. And because jobs start up usually fairly slowly, then they get really intense and then they taper off. And then there's other jobs going on over here and there. And what all these guys would do is one guy's job wound down and he was the job superintendent on that job and he wound down and he got that wrapped up. He'd go work on another guy's job and now he worked for him. And then that job would wind out and somebody else works all within the same contract. And then they work for him and they have to understand I'm in charge right here, right now. A week from now, somebody else is in charge of me. You got to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think too it'll give me like a good contrast because like right now like at Chick-fil-A we're all about like teamwork and we're all serving. Like I've been shown like a model where we have like it's like an upside down triangle, and it puts like Mike, who's our boss, at the very bottom, and it's sort of like he's lifting up our whole business, and it like keeps going to different levels, and like team members are at the top, because in the end that's what servant leadership is.
That's interesting. I haven't seen that model, but it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
And so like going into the military, it's gonna be the opposite. Like who's in charge of you. You know who you're supposed to like.
Well, no, I don't. Well, I do and I don't see the similarities because after all, this guy at the bottom was supposed to be supporting all you. He is the boss. He is calling the shots. You're going to do it his way. If you say he's on the bottom, but he is making it possible for you people up there to have your job and then make a living.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a bit different with the military, just because like the sergeants or the officers could care less if you keep your job in the army. Like in the end, it's like very, I would say, a self-centered career. Like you know, the goal is to get higher yourself. You're not helping others rise above you. And I feel like that's going to give me sort of complement what I've already learned so far, and give me a different viewpoint to help me like in the future navigate I guess you could say like the business world or whatever. So I feel like that's also gonna help me in the future.
Yeah. Well, you just said future. I know you talked about CIA, FBI, and you don't want a desk job.
Yeah.
So tell us more about what you do want, how it's all going to work.
If I was the FBI, I'd probably want to be like one of those, what everyone wants to be, secret agent or special agent. They're called special agents. But they do hire a lot of like finance and accountant. Like it's a lot of analytical work, which is just because I'm not like
solved some crime, and quite a bit of crime is paperwork crime, accounting crime. Nobody shot anybody or anything, and the FBI investigates a fair amount of that too, depending on what it is. But if it's fraud, I guess it's the FBI. If it's just making sure the accounting is correct, it's the IRS. If it's I don't know what else, but anyway, yeah. So what they call a forensic accountant who tries to look at the books and see if there's been fraud or just plain mistakes. Yeah. So anyway, but you don't want to be there.
Okay. Maybe when I'm like older, when I'm like, okay, my body's about dead. Let me put me on the desk. But that's probably why I'm not like dead set on the FBI. Like, there's one, marshal. They're deputy marshals. Yeah. I think that sounds very interesting because like they go after fugitives and then they bring them back to where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I guess now that you say that, I'm aware of the marshals, but yeah, actually the marshals are more like policemen and the FBI is more like investigators. Does that sound right?
Yeah, but the marshals are also sort of investigators because they still have to find the fugitives.
Yeah. That's like the police.
Yeah. So they sound interesting, or like the Secret Service. There's like two separate ones you can do. You can do like the one where you like protect people. So you're gonna be traveling around a lot, like you can protect the president, and like you won't be home a lot. Or there's one where you're stationed in DC, and your whole job is to protect the White House or surrounding areas. Sure. So I think that sounds interesting as well.
Okay. So you see yourself with an Uzi ready to shoot people.
Maybe. I mean, the last time I was in DC, we looked up and there's Secret Service men and women taking selfies on the front of the White House. Like, I mean, so that was funny, but yeah.
Honestly, I think that could get boring. You're just standing there looking around, making sure nothing bad happens, doing that for 8 hours a day. I don't know.
I know.
2 or 3 days of that, I think I'd be done.
So you have to protect people.
It needs doing. I don't mean it doesn't need doing.
There's one person I know. She's well, I don't know her, but like I've heard stories about her. But she's a Secret Service woman, and she protects JD Vance and goes on like bike rides with his family. Like it's basically like she has to be next to him 24/7. So I feel like that'd be interesting. Like get to like hopefully the people you're with aren't where you're not like where you're butting heads the whole time, but when they're nice, I feel like that'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think that could be interesting because after all, the vice president's job or the president's job, whether you like them or not, the job is interesting and challenging. And if you're there all the time, that probably never gets dull. I have to imagine.
It's like you're a nanny too.
Well, more than a nanny. I mean, you're the one that's supposed to take the bullet if anything bullets start flying. Um, yeah, and I just have to mention that J.D. Vance lives not far from here. When we go to see various people, go to different places, we go right past his house. You can always tell when he's home or not because it's not a bunch of Secret Service people there. He's not home, and if there are, he is. So yeah. So okay. What else we got?
Um. Oh, about where you grew up. What is it like to live in like a small town? Because you grew up in like, well, where was it? No.
Hillsborough.
Hillsborough.
Well, I didn't grow up there. You know that, didn't you?
Oh, I don't know. No,
I guess not. Well, I'm going to have to tell everybody, including you. Yeah, I grew up outside of Boston.
Oh,
I spent my entire childhood in that area. So it's a suburban town outside of Boston, but it was a suburb, so it wasn't isolated or anything. Then I went to two different schools, and then I became a teacher in Hillsborough, which is a small town. And since you bring it up, it's interesting because let's go back to growing up outside of Boston, a suburb. My experience that whole time largely is going to school. There's nothing else there much. We occasionally went, of course, we occasionally went other places, but mostly you just live in this little town and go to school. And if you're not in school, you're playing some baseball or something. But it's very not too exciting, I guess. Not a wide range of experience and stuff going on. The people are very much alike, so you're not talking about diversity. Not so much. Nice people, but not so diverse. Um, and I thought attitudes were kind of limited. I guess I'll go ahead and say this, and we'll see if I get in trouble or not. But I felt like as I was growing up, something's not quite right here. And being a kid and having no other experience, it's hard to say. I felt like people's, and maybe this isn't that unusual, but people's ideologies and perspectives were so similar. So it wasn't wide ranging. And that's when I started to realize college educated people, well, if they all get exactly the same education, that's not diverse. So they're all very much alike, or quite a bit alike. But I didn't know. I'm a kid. Even as a 15, 16-year-old, you start getting a bigger picture of things, but I still didn't quite get it. I got to say, though, I want to give an example. And you don't know this, but back in the 60s, when there were all the civil rights marches in the civil rights acts, and there had been segregation, and they were forcing white schools to take black kids, something we take for granted now and not so much then. But I'm at home. I don't know why I was at home alone with my mother, and I was maybe 13, 14, 15. I don't know. And the TV's on, and my mother's got it on to a live newscast, which live newscasts back then were a little unusual. That was just beginning to even happen. We take it so for granted for now. But actual live coverage of the school and all this hubbub and people giving speeches and carrying on. And I had no idea what they were even getting at. Segregation, what's segregation? What are they talking about? And I'm looking at this and I asked my mother, what's going on here? And she says, they won't let that black kid into school. I go, why not? And she goes, I don't know why not. So I wish she'd told me more than that, but I had at least figured out something's wrong here. So that's how isolated I was as a kid. Then I went to Hillsborough, Ohio, the small farm community, which everybody presumes they're so conservative and small-minded. Yeah, they are conservative typically, but they aren't small-minded. They're much more tolerant of different points of view, different people. That doesn't mean they all just, hey, let's all get together and sing kumbaya. But if these people over here want to be like this and those people over there want to be like that, no problem. It's much more wide open in their acceptance of what's what. And I always kind of felt like probably because they're farmers. Because when you're a farmer, you're kind of betting your life on the weather, on markets, on things you can't control, and you have to adapt continually to whatever's going on. You can't just be all ideological and say, I insist on it be like, I insist that it rain today. It doesn't quite work that way. I insist that the price of corn go up. It doesn't work that way. So as a farmer, you learn to assess the situation, the realities, and know what's really going on. And you're dealing with physical reality more than you're dealing with people. Uh, so the physical nature of things is your reality, less than the people. The people are just people, So go ahead and do what you do. And you raise corn, I'll raise beans. It doesn't mean we have to hate each other. That sort of thing. You go to this church, I'll go to that church. Who cares? So it was much more tolerant. It's one of the most tolerant places I've ever been. So there you go.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I learned a lot just from being there. I'm so glad. So glad I did that. To me, it was just a teaching job, which at the time was very difficult to get. So I was just glad I had a teaching job, but it was an incredible experience.
That's why I think it's good, like, to surround yourself with different people, different points of view. Because if you're like, if you just like you be around like the same people with the same point of view, and even if it aligns with your point of view, you're never gonna like be able to learn more. Or like, you might as well be a robot, just brainwashed robot. Like, what if your view? Like, what if the one that's around you isn't the right view? Like,
Yeah, well, I was talking about comprehension as opposed to being told something and learning it or forgetting it, or seeing something and remembering it, and then comprehension. You can read all the books in the world, and I recommend that you try as many as you can, but you're not experiencing it. You can only comprehend so much that way. You can comprehend quite a bit, but only so much. The only way you can comprehend who people really are is not by reading about them, but by being there with them and then being there with you. That's the only thing that really, really works. And so, yeah, I've experienced suburbs outside of Boston. I've experienced a small farm town. I've experienced the city. They're all very, very different, very different. If I only had one of those experiences, I'd be much less comprehensive of what I know. Went to school on the south side of Chicago for 2 years. There's an experience. Another 2 years in a farm community near Cleveland. There's an experience. Yeah, it all adds up. Plus, I like to brag. Everybody's been a student. I've been a student and a teacher. Everybody's been an employee. Just about everybody. I've been an employee. I've been an employer. Most people have rented some time of their life, and probably many still do. I've rented. I'm a homeowner, and I've been a landlord. So I've had all those ranges of experience. So when people say, "Oh, those people," I say, "Well, I was one of those people." So hold on a minute. Yeah. And it almost doesn't matter who you say those people about. I've been there, So just put a lid on it. That's where I come from. So
yeah, that's one thing that I wish like I could do is like be so many things at once. Like I'm like I gotta list my top ones because I can't do this, that, and that at the same time.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's unfortunate because I'd like to have every experience there is to have. But
like I would love to like learn a trade. Like I feel like that'd be very cool. But I can't learn a trade while also going to college while also doing other things.
Yeah, well, you're young. I didn't really. I had no right to call myself a woodworker until I was in my 30s, and became one of, all modesty aside, one of the best there is. But yeah, it just things develop, take time, and you pursue whatever you pursue. So. So yeah, I'm not surprised that you have some convictions about what you want to do, and yet you're kind of not really focused, and that's just as well. Yeah. And you might end up being a chef.
I know. That's why I like to like know like sort of have like the outline, but not like the full paper written. Like you never know what's gonna happen. Like obviously I was not expecting a year ago that I would have signed with the military.
Yeah.
And I'm like it's like you're just drifting along with the water, like wherever it goes, So you never know.
Yeah, well, and that's part of it. There's going along and there's blazing your own trail, and both have their advantages and disadvantages, and you pretty much have to do some amount of both. So yeah, finding that pathway that works. That's a lifetime experience. Okay. Yeah, I'm still kind of curious because your sister is very creative, but so are you. Maybe you don't know how creative you are. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pause this for a minute because I was going to do something and I didn't. Okay, so I wanted to pause this and come back because Yeah, I'm advertising my book, just like always.
Everybody
But
should read it.
and you should read it because it's a good book. But I wanted to bring it up here because guess who did the title design? That's right, Becca. And she did, this is my text here on the back, but she laid that out, which is a big deal. But the way I had it was nowhere near as good as this. So, you talk about being creative. You come up with something here that I tried and I didn't do it, but you did. And I'm very happy with it. So thank you for that. And buy the book on Amazon. So anyway, so yeah, that's why I wonder, because I know you're a good cook. Not just a functional cook, but a good cook. You can kind of create dishes. And that's how I'm kind of curious and you wanted to do it. I'm kind of curious why you went away from that.
I've since let's see, I think it was seventh grade was the first time I ever learned how to make a PowerPoint presentation. And because I didn't even like when I was younger before that, we had like a desktop computer. I didn't even know YouTube existed. So once I hit seventh grade, when I was going to
Isn't that old?
when I was going to 3 day a week co-op with a class full of 20 students, I learned like so much. That's when I like fully started learning about the world and everything. But seventh grade was the first year I learned what a PowerPoint was and how to make one. And I like sort of fell in love with it. I had like I think I made one on the like Indian Revolution War or something like that, and I had like arrows coming across the screen with the Indian and they're like pulling down, like, anything I could do to make the PowerPoint more engaging. And since then, I've sort of like learned how to like make the PowerPoints even better, learned how to like Photoshop. Like I've always like I'm not good at like drawing like, on a piece of paper. Like you have me draw, I can barely draw a stick figure right.
Yeah.
But if you give me a computer and you give me like, I usually like I can usually like replicate things really closely too. Like I can figure out how to get that looking how one thing is. So I might like take certain ideas from Google, but okay, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna take this part and I'm gonna add it together and like sort of just use my eye to like see how I like to make it, because like in the end the computer is making it look like that and I'm just sort of adding it all together.
But that's creative.
It is, yeah. So I'm like, give me a computer and I can be artistic. Other than that, don't even give me a piece of paper.
Well, that takes practice. Again, your sister is a very good artist. She's been doing it forever. She draws and draws and draws and draws. And you almost have to get good if you do that much drawing,
Yeah.
Because I can't draw. For all that I can do, I can't. Like I've tried painting. I just paintings in my head that are masterpieces, but they aren't going to go on the canvas. And it would take me thousands of hours of practice to get what's in my head onto a canvas. That's the reality. Nobody's born good at anything.
Yeah. And like with cooking, it's just sort of, I feel like that's sort of just stuck my whole life. Like, I mean, I've been cooking like for as long as I can as long as I could like pick up a spoon, I guess, and stir. And like I would always be like going into the kitchen and being like with Nana or with Nina or with my mom and be like, hey, can I help? And learn how to like make pancakes and stuff. And since then I've like obviously learned a lot about how to cook and bake, and so then I've just sort of been like, how can I make this better? How can I experiment? Like I'm naturally curious, and so like I'm always like, what if I add this or add that? Yeah.
And that's how anybody gets good at anything. For you, it just happens to be cooking. But yeah, and I don't know why people develop an interest like that at a young age. I mean, I was always into making things. I don't know why. I want to know why things work. How did they make this? What's it made out of?
See, I always say I like cooking and baking just because I like to eat more.
That's a good reason. But I like eating too. But it never made me decide I want to be a good cook.
Yeah, I think of it sort of like a challenge, because you take things that like you look at. Let's say we're trying to make a pizza. Yeah, dough by itself does not look attractive. Pepperoni is pepperoni, and like sauce, you can't get a spoon and start eating that. But you add it all together, it makes this masterpiece. So I think like as a whole, like, I think that's just cool to see it become something else.
Yeah. I always felt that way about paintings, is that an artist takes various colors of paint with different brushes and a little here, a little there, but it takes time. And after a while, it's like, whoa. And all it is brush strokes, you know? So, yeah, the component parts don't count for so much. As a matter, and by the way, I'm working on a play that plays to this, but the whole is greater than some of the parts. A painting is just a bunch of brush strokes, but you end up with maybe a masterpiece. So the
like especially like those people that take like things and make it into like a big like think like there's like one person that takes like rice or like I think beans or something and lays it down and puts it all into like a picture and then they like shake it and they push like let it fly and for like literally a split second you can see it all come to piece and then it just falls everywhere. But it's like individually you would never think those beans can look like how it looks.
say that again. It only looks like anything while it's in the air, you mean?
Yeah. Like
Well, it looks like we have an issue. Hold on. Okay, we had to stop a minute. We had a parking situation. We had to move some cars. Okay, and since we were stopped, Becca has found the art that she was talking about, not beans, but rice. And we think we can show it. So go ahead and get that going there. It's interesting.
Yeah, so actually it was made out of rice, individual rice. And she throws it up and it goes from like a painting to that. And it's literally a split second slow mo. And it turns into something you wouldn't even be able to see anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of work for something to last 2 seconds.
It is. It is. Like, I wouldn't have the patience to do that, I don't think.
Yeah, and well, when we're talking about that, I was thinking these people do these like sandcastle things at the ocean. They even have contests and they have these elaborate things. I mean,
that's one thing I've tried to make and I can't, like, I don't know how people envision it.
But they create masterpieces. They're like national competitions. And then the tide comes in. It's like, but, why not? My attitude is make something that will last as long as possible. Most of the work I've done.
Yeah.
Well, it could be around 1,000 years from now or not, but could well be. So.
It's okay. We'll put it in a museum.
Well, really, seriously. The cars that I do, they're unless something happens to them, nobody's going to throw them out or drive them until they don't work anymore. They'll last until a fire or an earthquake or something happens, and that could be who knows how long.